I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. Here's what I believe to my core. It is wrong to order American troops to step up when Afghanistan's own armed forces would not.
The incompetence of the Biden administration on this is really overwhelming. There needs to be resignations. There needs to be firings.
This makes all of us angry because it was completely avoidable.
What happens in Afghanistan doesn't just stay in Afghanistan. It spreads like a cancer.
President Biden speaking today, and you can see the fear, obviously, in the people running away from those planes at the Kabul airport. But you can also see it on the face and in the voice of one of the reporters in the Pentagon briefing today, a reporter, an Afghan woman who has been covering the Pentagon, but will go back to Afghanistan. Take a listen.
The Afghan woman didn't expect that overnight all the Taliban came. They took off my flag. This is my flag. And they put their flag. Where is my president, former President Ghani? He has to fight for us people. I had a lot of achievement. I left from the Taliban like 20 years ago. Now we go back to the first step again.
Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani left the country. Just to put a cost on what the U.S. has spent in the total cost of the war, $978 billion from 2001 to 2020, not including, obviously, the blood and treasure left there. Let's bring in our panel. Senior political analyst Bret Hume, Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, Harold Ford Jr., former Tennessee congressman, CEO of Empowerment Inclusion Capital, and Trey Gowdy, former congressman from South Carolina. Bret, your thoughts on the president's speech, particularly in this day?
Well, the president's speech was about the one thing that he knows is still popular, and that is the idea of getting out of Afghanistan. But for much of the speech, I couldn't figure out what so-called war he was talking about. We've been getting out of Afghanistan gradually, slowly, for years and years. We were down now in that country to about 2,500 American soldiers on the ground. No American soldier had been killed there in a year and a half, but that little modest force, with the air power, the intelligence, and the logistical support and the advice that came with it, was enough to maintain a kind of an uneasy stalemate in that country. The president comes along and blows the whole thing up because he wants to get out. We were getting out, and it mattered how we got out. It always matters how you get out in a situation like this. Withdrawals and evacuations are very militarily tricky and dangerous, and this one has been utterly and completely botched. And apart from saying that they didn't expect it would go downhill this fast, the president really did nothing to explain how that happened or why it has gone so badly.
Trey Gowdy.
Yeah, I mean, we have a choice as it relates to withdrawal. It was either the right policy wrongly executed, or it's the wrong policy wrongly executed. But I think everyone in the country agrees this has been a debacle. I keep thinking of the words of Robert Gates, not the Republican congressman we just played, but Obama's former Secretary of Defense, who said Joe Biden for 4 decades was wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security decision. That's Robert Gates saying that, 4 decades worth. I'm happy he kept a campaign promise because he seems really, really interested in doing that. I'm just sorry for all the carnage left behind because he did.
It has been interesting to watch the evolution of the week and how this transpired very quickly. Take a listen.
This is not just about the overall idea of leaving Afghanistan. This is about leaving hastily and ineptly. Secretary Blinken, how did President Biden get this so wrong?
So was he misled by his own intelligence agencies? Did he not listen to them? Why was he so wrong about that?
Mr. Biden, who hasn't been shy about changing all sorts of other policies he inherited from Iran to climate change, why was he unwilling to change this policy?
There's been an implosion of U.S. policy, and I think someone gets fired for this, and in my opinion, it would be Secretary Blinken. This is not the military's fault. This is an intelligence failure here in Washington.
Harold, reaction to all that?
Well, first off, thanks for having me. Look, I think Bret and Trey are about right in this sense. President Biden declared to the country, 3 out of 4 Americans agree with him, that America should not be in Afghanistan any longer. There's no doubt. We accomplished a lot of what we intended to accomplish. I was in Congress at 9/11. We believe that jihadists and al-Qaeda were operating from Afghanistan. We sent forces there to degrade them, to kill bin Laden, and we did. Anytime you project military, our American military into an engagement with a clear objective or a desired outcome, they generally do very, very well. But you invite trouble and you invite disappointment and you invite undesired outcomes when the defined purpose is not so defined. And over the last several years, it was not. He had that right. But without question, he being President Biden, but without question, they have botched this exit. This national security team of his, the pressure is mounting in many, many ways for them to fix this exit plan for all of our Afghan allies. But I would hope those of us who wish to be critical of the president, and I don't wish to be critical of him, but those who wish to be critical of him, please not conflate the two. The exit from Afghanistan is the right thing to do. We have other priorities we need to focus on. And if by some chance Afghanistan becomes a Woodstock for jihadists, guess what? We will be able to marshal a coalition of the willing, a bigger, stronger, and perhaps more resolute one than we did under President Bush, if that indeed is the case. But they have to fix this exit plan. This will be President Biden's Achilles heel if he does not.
We didn't hear a lot about the rules of engagement for those troops trying to get all those people out. We didn't hear how long the air bridge really is going to run in the president's speech. And just in the past few minutes, Ben, Associated Press, U.S. defense official confirms Taliban's sudden accumulation of U.S.-supplied Afghan equipment is, quote, enormous.
This is a travesty in so many ways, and I do think that we have to separate the policy here from the execution. The policy is broadly popular, and I heard the president come out and defend the policy of leaving Afghanistan. But it's a speech that he could have given 6 months ago, and it really didn't wrestle with any of the actual questions that people have over what they've seen over the past several days, particularly as it relates to any kind of confidence that we can have in our military leadership and our intelligence community that promised that something like this was going to take months if it happened. And frankly, we look back at that press conference that the president had where he was doing all this happy talk about the idea that the Afghan military was prepared, that Taliban leadership was not a foregone conclusion, that he expected them to fight, etc. And the question really becomes, is that what he really believed? Is that what he was being told? And why, if he was saying that then, does his attitude now seem to be, well, the people, who needed to get out, they should have been getting out much earlier. They chose to stay there. Well, maybe they chose to stay there because of the things they were hearing from the commander-in-chief of the free world. And that's something that I think is only on him. He cannot put that on Donald Trump. He cannot put that on previous administrations. It is on him that he chose to say that, and it's on him that it turned out not to be true.
All right, some more thoughts with the panel after a quick break.